everybody. This morning we're having a Folgers Black Silk, straight up, strong and black. I had some folks ask about, one person in particular, about masking techniques for when you paint your models. And when I was a kid, I didn't have any of the modern Tamiya tapes or anything. The only tape that was available to me was regular old Scotch tape. And I can remember putting it on the models and just burnishing it down so strongly that nothing could get in. And then I would spray paint the model. And the first one I did that with was an ITC Jet Ranger that my brother had brought me from Japan when he went on the World Jamboree up there. He brought me the Jet Ranger, the motorized remote, not radio, but remote control Tamiya T-34 tank. And I remember he brought me 3 models. I forgot what the third one was. But anyway, and I was so happy because it was the first time after I'd spray painted, of course I'd used too much spray paint, but when I peeled it off, I actually had a crisp demarcation line. And the helicopter was white, and I was just painting the blue color on it, and it let's see, when did he go on that Jamboree? 69, 70? So I'd have been about 9 years old. So for a 9-year-old, it looked okay. And today, when I want a clean demarcation line, I use Tamiya tape usually, and I have 3 different sizes because sometimes you just can't fit the big piece in there. Of course, when I want a feathered edge, like I was just doing on the swordfish, I actually just put a rubber glove on it, just put my finger over it because I knew it would leave a nice feathered edge. I've used Play-Doh, which works pretty well, but you have to remember to roll it, of course, and if you wind up mashing it down too flat, then it'll give a pretty crisp line. It just depends on how much of a feather you want. I know some of those air guns out there, some of those spray guns, can actually cut a feathered edge. You don't really even have to mark it off. Of course, I'm the guy that always winds up touching the clear piece with some paint on his finger or something, doing that kind of crap. But so if you guys have any masking techniques, had folks ask about that, just leave in the comment section. I'd be interested to hear. And don't exactly have a script today, but I had a couple of notes. Yes, it was. I asked about the movie The Sands of Kalahari. A couple of you guys confirmed it was The Sands of Kalahari was the movie where they flew into the swarm of locusts that conked their motors out. It's funny. I remember seeing that at the theater, and it's just the lizard traps and the locust swarm. Like the only thing I remember, and I don't know, I was 4 or 5 years old when I saw it. And I was terrified of locusts ever since after that because I was like, oh my God, if I'm flying in here, I want to be a pilot, and if I fly into a swarm of locusts, I'll crash. They don't show up on radar. Not that old plane would have had radar. I just added that last part. But anyway, I do love Flight of the Phoenix, especially the original. I've probably seen it 20 times. And but they were brought down by a sandstorm. And that movie's just, I know some folks don't like the movie because it's so slow paced. I'm like, well, that's the whole idea. It's about people rising to the situation. And last night, my wife was watching that movie with Harrison Ford. I think it's Anne Hesh, where I forget the name of it, where he's in the Beaver that they wound up crash landing on the island, and they get the pontoons off a wrecked World War II airplane because 60-year-old pontoons would still be in great shape. And I realize the movie's it's a rom-com. You don't take it seriously. But he said it's an old American float plane. I was thinking, with a change of one word, they could have added a lot of accuracy to the movie because it has a pair of pontoons. And I can't think of any American float planes that were in the Pacific in World War II that had dual pontoons. They were all centerline. The Kingfisher, the Seagull, the Curtis Seagull, the Vought Kingfisher, later on the Seamew, which apparently was a horrible airplane. Uh, and for that matter, most of the Japanese aircraft had a single pontoon. And I just had to be alert to that because I'm working on the Swordfish, which has a pair of pontoons. Anyway, the Japanese did have a very prolific observation aircraft, the Aichi E-13 Jake, and it actually used a pair of pontoons. So if he just said it's because the wreckage is so far gone, you know, it could have been anything. But if he just said, "Hey, it's all Japanese float plane," I thought, oh, it must have been an E-13. Even looked like it. The debris even looked like it, kind of tandem framed canopy and everything, a radial engine. So it's like, missed an easy chance to change it. Of course, the whole idea of strapping to the Beaver and making it take off. Like, yeah, you know, it's a fun movie, but that wasn't happening. You look at the stress those floats are under on takeoff and landing. But, well, I won't say it would have been impossible. Somebody asked about, made a comment about what's the name of the illness that makes us store models or start models that we never finish. I was like, oh, Jesus. Oh, man. We're not hoarders, but there's definitely there's a certain joy, I think, in having a lot of kits in your stash. You'll probably never build them all, but that's not it. You just, yeah, someday after we're all gone, they'll probably end up in an estate sale. But it's just the idea of having them. It's kind of like we enjoy going to the model shop and seeing all the models, and over time, hopefully you're working on them and getting to build some. But just the idea that you have them, there's a certain pleasure in that. They're an artifact of your life in a way. And they show an interest that you have. Well, that's my excuse. But of course, I have a dinky little stash. I think now that my Tremulous Fighter showed up, and I got that little Hurricane Sanwa Hurricane gifted to me. Thank you. That was Mr. Top of my head, man, I hope I don't get this mixed up. I'd hate to give someone the wrong credit, but I believe it was Mr. Zelinsky sent that to me. And if I don't write a few notes down, I don't keep things straight, and I never know what I'm going to talk about here. Sometimes I have an idea and I just scribble down a little note. And so I remember, oh, that'd be a fun thing to ask about. But outside of that is total stream of consciousness. And some of you nice folks have sent me some models, and like, oh, that's great, and you get out of the box and everything, and then about 2 days later, who sent that? Oh gosh, because like I said, I've got silicon coated bowling ball brain. Information comes in, slides right off. But and then I have currently now, we have the kits under production that we've started and then we never finish, and I have 3 kits, particularly the Vostok. That thing is just, I know one reason I kind of stopped working that thing halfway was I had to replace so many parts out of scratch built parts I go in to buy. I think it's the 6mm beads to replace those crappy oxygen tanks. It's I think an East German kit. I believe it's Raumschiff Model Balkhausen, which basically means Raumschiff Model Making House or Company. Anyway, but finally I just decided, I got tired of looking at it, decided to get working on it. Man, you got to drill every hole for everything, and I think I'm gonna have to go bring my electric drill in. I don't have a Dremel that can use the flat plates, but it's an old one. It doesn't. I need to get a Dremel that's got all the features on it. I can't believe I haven't gotten off my lazy butt and cheapskate butt and bought a Dremel yet. Anywho, I mean a good Dremel with all the accoutrements, because I desperately need one. I did something I don't usually do last night. About 10 o'clock, I went back to the shed, started tinkering on the cars again, because they had all afternoon to harden, all evening. And I gotta be honest with you. The two things I need to ask you guys about, especially car guys. One, the chrome parts had trouble adhering because I figured it's that chrome coating over the painted area on the car. So I had to use a generous amount of glue and clamp the crap out of them because they did not want to stay in place. And have alignment pins on those things. It's pretty much just a eyeball fit. And the other thing was the tires keep falling off. I don't know what. I think I'm out of CA glue, but the tires, the regular Tamiya glue, I'd put a pretty generous amount, put it on there, and then come back an hour later and glue it hard and nicely. But just the tire just popped off. It's like it didn't bite into the rubber that those tires are made out of. So that's it for today. What do you use to glue your rubber tires onto the plastic? And what's the best way to mount the chrome? Oh, by the way, to answer, a couple of guys are afraid I would over weather the car. No. It's going to have that worn look because it's going to look like something that I would drive. The way I figure is the 65 is going to look about the way the car would have looked around 1975 when it's on its third owner, who's a high school student, which is kind of or maybe, let's see, the car's a 65, about the way it would look somewhere between 75 and 80 when it wasn't really a vintage car yet. It was just an old sports car. The first owner bought it new, driven it for a few years, and then he went and got his family, so he sold it to someone who took care of it for a while, and then it wound up being somebody's grocery getter, and they gave it to their kid to drive to high school in, or college, or some kid who wanted a hot rod but couldn't afford something new. That's the kind of thing I would have driven when I was going to college. And to be honest, when I started I put the marks, like I put little tiny silver dots under where the key goes, where people miss with the key and they scratch the paint, and kind of add just a hint of corner rust in a few areas under the fender wells and the wheel wells, and chip the paint off the front where where the bugs get it, and the acid from their goo eats through the paint. And I put some very faintly faded spots on the trunk and hood, and the dash, and the top of the doors where like here in Florida where the sun beating down on it because it gets parked outside by its second and third owners, but not overdone. And I look at it, I was like, man, it actually started to get a little nostalgic, even though I never got to have a GTO, because I'm basically recreating the cars I went to school in, and I started having a lot more fun than I expected. And the other one I got to be real careful with, the blue one, because I'm trying to make it look like the new rebuilt hot rod owner's pet. Well, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you hopefully this evening. And oh yeah, gonna be doing some recording this weekend, so still working on some history videos, working on the stuff Andy sent me about Strombeck Becker and a whole bunch of other stuff, Olgeniak and a whole bunch of other stuff. Sergey, I hope to get Olgeniak out this weekend. All right, see you guys later. Oh, forgot to ask, did you see my wife's new logo? She made me a couple of new logos for Coffee with Max's models. Thanks. And if you want one of the mugs, this is the only one I have. My wife made it for me. Just download the logo. Walmart does it online. You send them the picture and like $25 and they send you the mug. See you guys later.